They were born with one body and two souls, but the world never saw the moment their mother was forced to choose which one would live. Today, we are exposing the secret Patty Hensel kept for 34 years. On March 7, 1990, in a quiet hospital in Carver County, Minnesota, a young emergency room nurse named Patty Hensel lay in a delivery room, preparing for what she believed would be a routine birth. All prenatal indicators, including multiple ultrasounds, had shown a single, healthy fetus. But when the doctors pulled the child from the womb, the entire room went completely cold. The doctor stood paralyzed, holding a newborn baby with two heads, one torso, and a single set of limbs. For 30 agonizing seconds, not a single person in that delivery room made a sound. It was a biological rarity so profound that most infants do not survive the first 24 hours. Yet, in that silent room, Patty looked at her children. Not with fear or revulsion, but with the fierce protective instinct of a mother who had just been handed an impossible hand by fate. She did not see a medical anomaly. She saw her daughters, Abby and Brittany. And in that very first hour, before the world could even register what had happened, Patty made a secret, unspoken pact. A pact that would shield her daughters from the aggressive scalpels of modern medicine and the exploitive gaze of a voyeuristic public. To understand the depth of this maternal burden, we have to look at how this journey began. Throughout her entire pregnancy, Patty Hensel had absolutely no indication that her life was about to pivot on a historic scale. As an experienced emergency room nurse, she was highly attuned to the signs of a complicated pregnancy. She attended every routine checkup, underwent every standard test, and watched the ultrasound monitors with a trained eye. Yet, the technology of the era failed to capture the reality of her womb. Doctors later hypothesized that the twins' heads were so perfectly aligned, one behind the other during the sonograms, that they appeared as a single, normal child. Even when Mike Hensel, her husband, thought he heard two distinct heartbeats during a prenatal checkup, the medical staff dismissed it as an echo. This was a critical miscalculation. When Patty went into labor, doctors believed the baby was simply in a breech position, prompting an emergency cesarean section. The sudden revelation of dicephalic parapagus twins was a shockwave that shattered the clinical detachment of the surgical team. In that era, the medical consensus surrounding conjoined twins was heavily skewed toward immediate, aggressive separation. Surgeons viewed conjoined bodies as a problem to be solved, a physical error to be corrected by the knife, regardless of the human cost. But Patty, with her clinical background, immediately saw the terrifying math behind that approach. She knew that the statistical survival rate for conjoined twins was dismally low, with approximately 70% of such births resulting in stillborns and only a fraction of survivors making it past infancy. The pressure to conform to medical standards, to allow the surgeons to slice her newborn daughters apart in a desperate bid for individual normality, was immense. Yet, Patty stood as a barrier between her children and the medical establishment, initiating a lifelong struggle that remained completely hidden from the public eye. But wait, if you think this is a story about a simple, heartwarming medical miracle, you are completely missing the dark, silent compromise that Patty Hensel had to carry in her heart for decades. Because a massive plot twist recently erupted that shattered 34 years of family privacy and forced a terrifying question back into the spotlight. In early 2024, public records revealed that Abby Hensel had quietly married a military veteran and nurse named Josh Bowling back in 2021. This sudden viral revelation didn't just spark internet curiosity. It reignited a dormant ethical firestorm. How does a conjoined twin navigate a legal marriage? What happens to the sister, who remains single, sharing the exact same body and reproductive system? And most shockingly, what is the secret medical reality Patty kept hidden from her daughters since their infancy about their future? A secret that makes this viral marriage both a triumph and an incredibly high-stakes biological gamble. To truly grasp the magnitude of what Patty Hensel protected, we must dissect the brutal medical reality she faced immediately after giving birth. The doctors did not just present the option of separation as a routine procedure, they framed it as an ultimate binary choice. because Abby and Brittany are dicephalic parapagus twins, their anatomy is an intricate, shared labyrinth. They share a single circulatory system, a single bladder, a single set of reproductive organs, and a single lower body. However, they each possess their own heart, stomach, spine, and lungs. To separate them meant surgeons would have to literally cut their shared torso down the middle, allocating limbs, nerves, and organs to one child while depriving the other. In the cold language of clinical medicine, separation meant choosing which daughter would receive the viable lower limbs and organs, and which daughter would be left with a severely compromised, potentially non-viable half-body. The doctors admitted that the likelihood of both twins surviving such an operation was virtually zero. If they proceeded, Patty would have to sign a consent form that was effectively a death warrant for one of her daughters, or perhaps both. Mike Hensel later captured this agonizing dilemma in a single, devastating question. How could you pick between the two? As a nurse, Patty understood the raw physics of the operating table. She knew that the human body is not a machine where parts can be cleanly uncoupled and reassembled. She knew that the surgical trauma alone could trigger systemic organ failure, ending both of their lives before the first reconstruction could even begin. So, she made the ultimate executive decision as a mother and a medical professional. She refused. She chose unity over division, choosing to let her daughters live as one rather than risking their lives in a desperate bid to satisfy society's obsession with physical conformity. But choosing to keep them conjoined was only the first battle in an endless war against physical and social limitations. Imagine waking up every day where your left leg and left arm do not belong to you, and your right leg and right arm are controlled by an entirely different mind. This is the daily reality of Abby and Brittany. Each sister controls only one half of their shared body. Abby controls the right side, while Brittany controls the left. In their infancy, learning even the most basic human milestones required an unprecedented level of neural synchronization. To crawl, they had to coordinate their independent limbs in perfect alternating sequences. To walk, they had to develop an implicit, telepathic-like understanding of each other's weight distribution and center of gravity. Clapping their hands together required both minds to fire motor signals at the exact same millisecond. Patty watched her babies struggle, fall, and cry, resisting the urge to overprotect them. Instead, she pushed them to find their own rhythm. And they did. They didn't just learn to walk, they mastered running, swimming, riding a bicycle, playing the piano, and even driving a car. When they got their driver's licenses, they both had to take the test and pass it individually. Abby controlled the right side of the steering wheel and the pedals, while Brittany controlled the left side, the turn signals, and the lights. It was a masterclass in human adaptability. But behind this seamless coordination lay a constant, silent physical toll. Their bodies had to work twice as hard to perform standard tasks, and their shared circulatory system meant that if one sister contracted an infection, both would suffer. Yet their individual immune systems reacted differently. If Brittany caught a cold, Patty had to medicate them, knowing that the active ingredients would circulate through their shared bloodstream, affecting Abby's body even if she was perfectly healthy. As Abby and Brittany grew into adulthood, graduating from Bethel University with degrees in education and securing jobs as fifth-grade teachers, the world assumed they had conquered every obstacle. They were paid a single salary, which they accepted, arguing that they do the work of one teacher in terms of classroom management, even though they possessed two distinct minds and teaching certifications. But as they entered their 30s, the private boundaries they had so fiercely guarded began to leak into the public arena. The viral news of Abby's marriage to Josh Bowling in 2021, which only surfaced publicly in recent years, sent shockwaves through the internet. The marriage introduced an entirely new layer of ethical, legal, and biological complexity that Patty Hensel had anticipated decades earlier. In the 2003 documentary, Joined for Life, Patty was asked about the possibility of her daughters having children of their own one day. She answered with characteristic candor, stating that it was biologically possible because their shared reproductive organs worked perfectly. But the reality of a shared reproductive system in a married life presents a profound moral and physical paradox. While Abby is legally married to Josh, Brittany is not. They share a single bloodstream, a single pelvis, and a single pelvis, and a single reproductive tract. Any future pregnancy would be a shared physical experience, requiring both sisters to undergo the immense physiological changes of gestation, labor, and delivery, even though only one sister is legally a wife. This is the unexposed frontier of their lives, a reality where the boundaries of individual identity, bodily autonomy, and legal rights are completely blurred. Patty Hensel's decision to keep her daughters conjoined was not just a choice to preserve their lives in infancy. It was a decision to thrust them into an unprecedented adult existence where every personal milestone is a shared, public debate. To understand the rarity and the profound wisdom of Patty's decision, we must compare the Hensel twins to other historical cases of conjoined twins. Consider the tragic case of Jody and Mary, born in Manchester in 2000. Their parents, deeply religious, opposed separation, preferring to leave their fate to nature. However, the medical and legal systems intervened. The courts ordered a forced separation because Mary, who was kept alive solely by Jody's heart and lungs, was failing, and doctors argued that without separation, both would die. The surgery was performed. Mary died on the operating table, and Jody survived. This case exposed the brutal cold calculus of a medical system that would sacrifice one life to save another in the pursuit of individuality. In contrast, Patty Hensel refused to let the courts or the doctors play God with her daughters' lives. Another example is the Chappell twins, Lori and George, who spent their entire 62 years conjoined at the head, fiercely rejecting any suggestion of separation, proving that a fulfilled, independent, and joyful life is entirely possible without undergoing a life-threatening surgery. Patty recognized this fundamental truth long before the medical community did. She understood that a shared life, no matter how complex, was infinitely superior to a divided grave. Ultimately, the story of Abby and Brittany Hensel is not a story of medical voyeurism, but a testament to the quiet, unshakable resolve of a mother who dared to defy the medical status quo. Patty Hensel carried a burden that would have broken most parents, navigating the delicate balance between public curiosity and private dignity. She raised two daughters who do not see themselves as a tragedy, but as a triumph of coordination, love, and shared destiny. As they continue to navigate the complex waters of adulthood, marriage, and potential motherhood, they do so with the strength that Patty instilled in them from their very first breath. If you want to understand how other families have navigated the absolute limits of human survival and medical science, click on the video on your screen right now, where we dive into another unbelievable story of resilience against all odds.